So thank you so much to Luke for flying me over. This is a great privilege to be able to speak to you about something that I think is so interesting, both in terms of the technology itself, but also when you combine it with design, it's just, magic just happens. So I'm just going to quick run you through the agenda of this talk today. First, you're going to hear just a little bit about why I'm standing here before you. Then you're going to get a contextual understanding of blockchain and Bitcoin and the financial crash of '08 and the resulting crash in trust. The whole contextual understanding of Bitcoin and blockchain is fundamental if you want to design with purpose and you want your design to be greater. So we're going to do 3 segments in this talk. The first one is the contextual understanding of Bitcoin and blockchain. And that includes the rise of fintechs, blockchain and Bitcoin companies, the cost of entry, which has been lowered, versus the barriers of regulations, which are increasingly getting higher and higher. Then we're going into an exploration of the state of trust in blockchain and Bitcoin. And there we're going to look at a study which was conducted by HSBC in 2011, which all in all is going to be very enlightening when you want to talk about how you can create a greater design for these sort of companies. And last and finally, I'm doing something that I haven't done before. It's kind of controversial, but it's my 5 rules of dating, or like 5 rules of design that you can directly apply to your Bitcoin or blockchain or actually fintech companies in terms of creating greater design. So my real background starts with my family. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and my mom and dad has created startups after startups for as long as I can remember. And we were all individually, we're 4 siblings, and I suffer from middle child syndrome, which I don't know if anyone can recognize. But we were all urged and encouraged to participate in the dinner table conversation where we got to discuss the different businesses, everything that they had going on, and we were able to, bring in our thoughts and our small talents, which was great because then I quickly realized that my domain was in the visual, and that really worked out for me because when you consider the fact that my big brother, he always came with the financial aspect. He's now a great economist and has a very successful Bitcoin brokerage in Copenhagen together with my dad. And my sister, she's a sociologist, which means she's great with people, she knows cultures, she knows group dynamics and all that stuff. And my mom, she's a psychologist, so she knows the whole HR approach to creating a business. And my dad is an IT engineer, so he knew how to build it. So that didn't leave that much room for any other fields. I couldn't overlap with anyone else, so I had to choose visual domain, and thank God I did. So that led me to a background in art history and visual culture. I currently work as a designer and a fintech analyst at Denmark's largest bank, Danske Bank. So before we design anything, I think it's absolutely crucial that we get an understanding of the context and the world that our customers live and navigate in, because without that, we don't have anything we can ground our foundation of the design on. And thankfully, I think that we are in a field that's ever evolving, ever growing, and that is fintech. And it's very, very, it's amazing to be able to, influence a market through design in the way that we hopefully can. So to give you a brief overview, as you probably know, there's a rise of fintech and blockchain companies, and it's a very exciting time to be a blockchain and Bitcoin company. In 2017, we saw a global fintech financing hit a world record. Europe saw the biggest fintech funding jump, and interestingly enough, we saw that the US, which has predominantly been the largest investor in blockchain and Bitcoin companies, they didn't close as many deals with early stage startups as they used to. However, they made more concentrated bets on stage A or B companies, which says something about the market is evolving, and it's getting more, the whole FinTech scene is getting more evolved, and it's very interesting to follow what's going on there. So why now? Why is there such a rise in FinTech and blockchain companies? Essentially, the cost of entry has been lowered significantly. In 2000, just to give you a perspective, it was estimated that it would cost around $5 million to create your own tech startup. But today, it's practically zero. It doesn't cost you a thing. And that's largely due to a lot of technological advances in the field. Furthermore, I think the crash of 2008 also has something to do with it. There's been a crash in trust in the financial services industries in general, and that led to the fact that people were seeking solutions and services elsewhere. Plus, a lot of people saw that there was an opportunity to make some extra cash and benefit society in a different way based on this crash. However, regulations are becoming a real barrier because it costs a lot of money to always being able to navigate in a landscape of regulations, and they're only they're only increasing more and more, which is also very interesting because we can see that there's because FinTech startups are so agile in their business models, it's completely okay that they are shifting their business model from just direct to customers, which is consumers and businesses, to a more B2B2C model. But they are trying to work more collaboratively with incumbents as distributing partners, which is very interesting. Okay, so what does this mean for us exactly, and why do we need to investigate or explore the state of trust in blockchain and Bitcoin? I would say fundamentally as a designer, if you don't have trust, you don't have any customers. We need to understand the context of distrust that our customers are living and navigating in right now in order to be able to design better products and better services and platforms for our Bitcoin and blockchain companies. So HSBC created a study in 2017. It was conducted with around 12,000 participants from around 11 countries and territories. What they essentially did was to map out how people would place technologies, family and friends, companies, countries, everything out in terms of trust and other emotional parameters. So this is the matrix that I'm giving to you because it's most relevant for our talk today. So they discovered that where trust is deep and long-term, there is love. And it's only habited by family and friends in the upper left quadrant right there. Long-term institutions for whom have a modest level or low level of trust, they are considered only necessary features of our lives, and they are therefore under the necessary quadrant right there. Other services such as search engines and online shopping experiences, they are considered functional in a way. We rely on them, we trust that they will work, but we don't necessarily feel loyal to them at all. We will abandon them if something better comes along. But the two most exciting quadrants for us to remember right now is the love and the lust. So the lust quadrant, that reflects startups, that reflects FinTech, that reflects everything as it is in the zone of frivolity. Startups usually have an unproven business model, and they are, they catch our eye, and it's lust in its most shallow and short-term form. It's like buying a new gadget or having a quick fling or something like that. It's exciting and experimental, but it's hard to retain their attention, and it quickly dies out. Oh shit. Sorry. If we're going to plot in blockchain and Bitcoin, I think you already discovered the answer. It's just going to be right over there. it's pretty obvious that only humans can habitat the love zone, but it is necessary for us to try to work as designers to move them closer into that whole area of trust. And the key here is to foster some basic human elements of compassion, understanding, integrity, and safety. And it's not impossible to foster that in a company. And it's very, very basic. It is compassion, understanding, integrity, and safety. If we can apply those principles through our design, we will hit closer to, a home run, basically. So that's our main goal here. Again, as my job as a designer is basically to truly and empathically try to understand our customers and the context that they are living in, and without that, we can't really design shit for them. And the fact is, right now, financial institutions are considered necessary, but there are some companies out there that have hit closer and closer to the whole love quadrant of the matrix right there. Companies such as Apple, Harley-Davidson, Disney, those companies are excellent at fostering human elements of understanding, compassion, integrity, and trust. And that's what we want. That's our primary goal of designing for Bitcoin and blockchain companies. So this is the final segment of this talk, and it's pretty controversial, but I don't know if it's going to work, but bear with me. So I was, after work, I came to a bar in Copenhagen. It's called the Barking Dog. If you ever go there, please give me a shout out. I'll come join you, it's great. But I was sitting in the bar, and I came up an hour earlier because I was running late for work, but I didn't have time to come home and change, and my friends was meeting me there. So I just said, okay, fine, I'll just order my drink and just people watch for an hour, which was really nice. And through those interactions that I witnessed, it just dawned on me that this was pretty much gold for me as a designer, because I could suddenly see there was a perfect correlation between dating or hooking up in bars and design. And I think, or my hope is that this will help me clarify my points on design for you guys when you're designing for Bitcoin, blockchain, or any other fintech. So I have a case scenario for you. Imagine you're in a bar or in a pub, if you will, over here. There's people all around you looking to either sell or to buy. And the door opens, and in comes a guy. Meet Mr. Bitcoin. So Mr. Bitcoin, he's kind of a bad boy. He is painfully difficult and super complicated that we are on the brink of not even wanting to get to know him better. He looks great, and his volatility only makes him sexier. But I mean, there's just something about him that we kind of want to, grab onto and hold onto, but still we don't trust him at all. So he's so different from what we usually know, the boring bankers over in the corner. Sorry, I'm a banker too, so sorry. But he's so different that we kind of crave him and we just want him. Next up, a girl comes into the bar. Meet Miss Blockchain. She's very good looking. She's super cool. She's whip smart, and she has depths that no one can figure out. I mean, literally no. Oh well, 10% can probably explain what she is, but I mean, it's very, very few. And even though we don't really truly understand her, we still know that we want something to do with her, because as soon as we are seen together with her, our personal stock will just grow. I mean, any company that she is mentioned, we will just have to invest in, because she is so cool that her super new cool ways, if they are applied to an already okay working database, our investors will flip and our stock will triple. So that's just it. Okay, so now imagine that you are Mr. Bitcoin or Miss Blockchain, and you are going to find some people to hook up with. So my first tip is pretty basic. Dance like someone's watching. I think you've all heard the saying, like, sing like no one's listening, and dance like no one's watching. Well, both in bars and in design, that's terrible advice. I mean, please dance like you actually give a fuck. This is serious. I mean, there's something super charming and super creative and fun about seeing someone who just gives zero fucks and just dance just the way they want to, and it's just very inspiring and all that stuff. But as we've already seen and mapped out, Bitcoin and blockchain are already in that quadrant where they are so rebellious and they are, so edgy and cool that we don't need more of that. If we get more of that, you'll just end up being more shallow and get our customers to lust them more and all that stuff. But it's not going to give or produce loyal customers and drive them further into the whole love quadrant. That's our end goal here. So I would say make them look super boring, like dance like a banker, essentially. Be so classy in your design of a Bitcoin or blockchain company that you would proudly introduce them to your very conservative parents. Otherwise, it's not really going to work. Tip number 2, focus on why instead of what. For example, if you're talking about or you're trying to sell Bitcoin, don't talk about the specifics of the technology, because I swear to you, maybe 2% of the population really truly understand it. The rest of them, maybe 20%, pretend that they do, and the rest of us don't have a clue about how it works. It just sounds cool. We just want to be in it, but we don't really, essentially we don't care about what the technology is. The same way, you don't go up to a hittable person in the bar and talk about the small, perfect nuances of your personality, why you're so great, and how dense your muscles are, and how perfect your brain is. Like, we don't care about the specifics. Just tell us why you will enrich our world, basically. And I know that sounds super selfish. That's just how we as customers want it to be presented. That's how you as designers should think about it. When you're selling Bitcoin, sell them the world. Sell them the grand vision and don't get lost in the details. I've been working with probably 6 Bitcoin and blockchain companies, and I swear to you, it's so easy to pinpoint exactly when their CTO has been involved in the design process. And I say this with so much love, but you don't let the geniuses who built a car sell the damn thing. I mean, that's never going to work. So let the designers do their job and let them focus on why instead of the specifics, essentially. Tip number 3, be the best you can be. And by this, I don't mean, don't compare your Bitcoin or blockchain company to any other company in the same industry. Your competition is essentially Apple, Harley-Davidson, Disney, all the companies that have hit so close to the whole love quadrant that I showed you before. Those are a real competition, because if you aim that high, then you raise the bar for yourself, and you're only getting closer and closer to having truly, caring and loyal customers. So, for example, if you look at Apple, when Steve Jobs came back, he turned the whole company around by focusing on what? The people who were going to buy the products, and essentially the people who were considered the misfits, the rebels, the creatives, the villains. Well, there's very beautiful thing going on here, because that exactly is what describes the people who originally created and used Bitcoin and blockchain to begin with. It was the rebels, it was the villains, it was the bad boys who unfortunately got a bad reputation by being involved with drugs, but in the black market. But that's another thing. But there should be a feeling that we are doing this for them. And again, that it's more the purpose behind the product and the tool that it is, and what it can be, that it should be the main focus here. So dating tip number 4, know who you are and use it to your advantage. Essentially, you have to remember that your customers, they have a trust issue when it comes to financial services, and they look at technology with lust. That could be a very bad thing, but it can also be to your advantage. So if you can design your company with as close proximity to calm and boring, and yet not look like a banking institution, not copy-paste the color scheme of a bank, or create a logo like Stratton Oakmont or something like that, then you're covered, you're fine. But this is obviously a lot more difficult than this, but if you conceptually understand this, then I think it will be easier for you to design for Bitcoin and blockchain. And the last tip is maintain the balance between sweet and salty. If we take a look at our Bitcoin guy and we take a look at our blockchain girl, if we can create a balance between that whole rebel vibe whilst also giving them a feeling of security, of integrity, of compassion, of understanding, and fostering those same human elements that we have seen before is what drives customers to feel more linked to a company or resonate better with a company, then we have got something of value here. And it shouldn't be too boring, it shouldn't be too risky, but if we can hit that spot in between where it feels human of some kind, then we're getting close to something perfect. So I think my last remarks is really try to look at design for Bitcoin and blockchain through an interdisciplinary approach. Don't neglect where your customers are at, and try to do as classy as possible. And thank you so much to Luke for having me, and for all you guys for listening to this presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be outside and meeting you all, but that's it.